In the film Justice League Flashpoint, the Flash goes back in time and changes history in order to save his mother's life. Unfortunately, this change has a rippling effect across time and changed key events in the DC Universe's history. These changes turn the world we know in the comics into a war-torn, desolate world where everyone was constantly in danger of dying or already dead. Now, naturally, once the Flash realised what he'd done, he wanted to put everything back the way it was. But he couldn't, as the Reverse Flash was draining off the Speed Force, so the Flash couldn't get enough Speed Force power to go back in time.
As long as I can siphon off the Speed Force, you can't escape this timeline.
I do quickly want to say that this isn't how the Speed Force works in the comics and the TV shows and video games. It only seems to work this way in this film as a plot device. So if you're thinking, how can he drain off the Speed Force? That doesn't really make any sense. You're right, it doesn't. It was just a plot device for this film. But anyway, in order to save the world, Batman, the Thomas Wayne version, shoots the Reverse Flash through the head, killing him. This allowed Barry Allen to put the world back the way it was, though a few things had still been changed, and because of these changes, this new timeline became the New 52 universe of films that we've seen over the past few years. But for the Reverse Flash, this moment was the end of him. Or at least that's what we all thought. But instead, the Reverse Flash, whose real name is Eobard Thawne, is still alive. Sort of. You see, after he was shot, there was a brief, very brief, moment before he actually died. And the Reverse Flash pulled all the Speed Force energy he could into his body, in order to extend this instant of time into several days. Now, the explanation given in the film Suicide Squad: Hell to Pay is basically just the previous sentence I've said and the word Speed Force. So I'm going to go over it in slightly more detail to try and make it make a little more sense. Basically, the Reverse Flash has absorbed as much of the Speed Force energy as he physically can, more than he has ever absorbed before, because he has never been so desperate before. And using this energy, he is able to move faster than he ever has before as well. His body is supercharged, and it's moving so fast that his body hasn't even realised that he's dead. The Speed Force energy that he's absorbed is keeping his body in this hyperstate in order to keep him alive. In this state, his heart is not beating, his blood is not pumping. In a way, he's not really alive at all. He's just a man frozen in between heartbeats. But the Speed Force energy that his body has absorbed have put him in a state where his heartbeats are literally days in between. And we know that his heart has stopped because he isn't bleeding from his rather large head wound, which only happens when the heart isn't beating. However, he does bleed at one moment in the film, after using a lot of Speed Force power. From this, we can deduce that his body has soaked up Speed Force energy like a sponge, but a lot of that power is being used to keep his body from dying, and since he can only hold so much power at once, each time he uses his powers, he drains a little bit more of the Speed Force out of him. In order to simplify this, think of the Reverse Flash as a bottle of water. Now, the Reverse Flash is the bottle, and the water inside it is the Speed Force energy. Now, normally he can drain as much of this water as he wants, and it doesn't matter if he drains it all, as he can just refill it. But now the bottle has a hole in the bottom, with water dripping out. Now this is the power that's keeping him alive, slowly draining the bottle's water. And then each time he uses his powers, the water pours out of the bottle faster. And the more he uses his powers to do more advanced things, the water pours out even faster still, until it's emptying faster than he can fill it up. Now, as I say, this normally doesn't matter, as he can just refill it. The problem is this time, if this bottle ever runs empty, then he dies. So basically, the Reverse Flash has to use his powers as little as possible. And this is why he can't do all the things he normally does, such as run faster than the speed of light, or run through time, or even phase through walls, as they all require large amounts of energy. This is summed up perfectly when Deadshot says,
"He's too slow. He should have broken into this jalopy and killed us all by now."
And the reason for this is what I've just said. His powers are no longer unlimited. He has to be careful in how much he uses, as most of his power is just keeping him alive. And it's because of this that he has to use henchmen in the film.
What are you waiting for? Do I have to do everything?
I feel I have to say that he is still going to die eventually. After all, he's already dead. He's just delaying the final moment of his life for as long as he can, but he can't delay it forever. Now, you may also wonder how the Reverse Flash is able to do any of this when he has a good portion of his head missing. After all, him moving at super speed is fine and makes sense, since he has this as his superpower. But normally, a person still needs a brain to be able to do this, otherwise, how the hell would they move their body? Now, the long answer to this question is that the electrical signals that his brain would normally send through his nerves are instead being sent via the Speed Force. Now, the easiest way to explain this is to think of a slow motion video. This video shows a water-filled balloon popping in slow motion, and just after the balloon is popped, the water still holds its shape, as though the balloon was still holding it in place, though this only happens for a split second before the water falls apart. And this is what is happening to the Reverse Flash. He is existing in this infinitesimal amount of time where the water, his brain, still holds its right shape, and the Speed Force is extending this moment into days, keeping his brain in the right shape even though it's been destroyed. And that is how the Reverse Flash is still alive, even though he is dead. Now, I hope this makes sense to anyone who is a little bit confused by him being in the Suicide Squad Hell to Pay film. But what do you think of my reasoning? Does it make sense to you? Or do you think the Speed Force is keeping him alive in some other way? Be sure to let us know in the comments, and I'd just like to say a quick thank you to those who made this video possible by donating to the Needle Mouse Productions page on Patreon. Patreon is a crowdfunding site that is helping us to bring you more videos each week and to raise funds for adapting comic book stories into short animated films. If you're interested in donating or just want to find out more, a link is in this video's description. And as always, thanks for watching, and feel free to subscribe, share, like, and comment.